this comes because it wasn't leaked. This is an audio recording, a very very poor quality audio recording of a an online sort of Zoom meeting presentation from a lady called Aruna Kilanani. Right, so she's, I believe, Indian, but American and Americanized, and she gave this talk called "The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind," and this was given at this Yale, a Yale platform via the internet, and she wanted it released. In fact, she went on her TikTok and was like, "They're suppressing me for not releasing this talk." She's TikTok. She's got 12,000 followers, but she's, as she says, a doctor in forensic psychiatrist and psychoanalyst with expertise in violence and racism. And in this talk, I'm not going to use any clips from it because the quality is insanely bad, and I just don't want to put you through it. But we've got the quotes, so we'll go through those in a second.
Hang on, so they put this up and then
No.
tried to put it down?
No, Yale only released it internally, and she went on TikTok and was complaining that they're suppressing her free speech and they're silencing her, and it's like, okay, then I suppose it can be put public. And Barry Weiss hosted it on her Substack page, and I'm amazed that she thought this was a good idea because she sounds like a lunatic. She sounds honestly like it sounds kind of Ted Bundy-ish, to be honest. It sounds kind of like an actual serial killer and the fantasies they have about their victims. That's what she sounds like. And so they were like, well, okay, I mean, I guess this can go public if that's what you want, but we disavow this. So Yale actually disavowed this, but we'll get into it. So just using the New York Times reporting here, the talk is titled "The Psychopathic Problem of the White Mind." Again, highly ironic title. And it was presented to the School of Medicine's Child Study Center as part of Grand Rounds, a weekly forum for faculty and staff members and others affiliated with Yale to learn about various aspects of mental health. She is a private psychiatrist. She runs a private practice, and she was invited to come and speak there. She isn't affiliated with Yale. She works in New York. But she has just these amazing quotes, and I say amazing to be amazed at. Not that they're good; they're obviously terrible, and it's just mad though. So she described a psychological dynamic that is on PTSD repeat, in which people of color patiently explain racism to white people who deny their attacks. When people of color become angry, white people use that anger as confirmation that we're crazy or have emotional problems. So she was at a therapy session with a white therapist, trying to explain to the white therapist that the white therapist was racist, and the therapist is like, right, okay, I think there might be something wrong with you. And she's like, that's your racism talking. She recalled a white therapist telling her in psychoanalysis that she was psychotic whenever she expressed anger at racism, and that she had spent years unpacking her racism to her, even though she was the one being charged for the sessions. So she's paying to see a therapist, and the therapist is like, right, okay, I think you might be psychotic, I think you might have a few problems. And she's like, you're a racist. I will explain your racism to you. And she's like, but I'm paying for this to explain racism to her. And it's like, yes, but you are psychotic. Anyway.
I think the medical professional might be right.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, she's a medical professional too. That's the thing. So Dr. Kilanani said, "This is the cost of talking to white people at all. The cost of your own life as they suck you dry." Stereotyping there. I mean, come on. We're not all vampires. Not all of us, anyway. Alex Jones will point out some of us who are vampires, but they're in the New York U.S. government. But she literally says, "There are no good apples out there. White people make my blood boil." So all white people are evil. They suck you dry, and there are no good apples. Sniffles from
She's
me.
about to say we all work in banking or something as well.
No, she genuinely hates white people. She says then she systematically white ghosted most of my white friends, which I assume is different somehow to black ghosting. It means, you ghost someone, you just ignore them. Yeah, exactly. But she did that to all of her white friends. And she got rid of a couple of white BIPOCs that snuck in my crew too. Do you know what a BIPOC is?
Is that like...
Black, Indigenous, or person of colour?
Oh,
That's
Jesus
like BAME
Christ.
for America. Or
Yeah. I saw the Green Party have started using BBIPOC. I don't know what the extra B stands for.
No, the black, brown, maybe? Who knows? But this acronym means Black and Indigenous People and People of Color. How are they white? How are they white? That's the question, isn't it? The answer, of course, must be philosophically white, as in they have the whiteness they support, even though they've got the wrong color skin, which apparently is something that matters here.
In the same way, white supremacists will say you're a Jew even though you're not Jewish.
Yeah, basically. But she says this. I had fancies of unloading a revolver into the head of any white person that got into my way, burying their body and wiping the bloody hands as I walked away relatively guiltless with a bounce in my step like I did the world a favour. At Yale. Conference to understand mental health or whatever it was from psychologists and psychiatrists.
I mean, that is Klan's position. You'll hear Klan members talk like that.
I mean, I can see why her therapist was like, I think you have psychosis. Because that's a weird power fantasy about just murdering white people because they're white.
And it's a favour to society.
It's a favour to society. I mean, that's literally Hitler's view on the Jews.
Yeah.
We've arrived at that. It's literally Mao's view of the landlords. We've arrived at this. You know,
The Klan hanging black guys.
Yeah, this is what her worldview is. She carries on saying, of course, don't bother trying to talk to white people because it's, quote, a waste of our breath. We are asking a demented, violent predator who thinks they are a saint or a superhero to accept responsibility. It ain't going to happen. They have 5 holes in their brain. The projection is off the charts, of course, unmeasurable. She's literally saying, you violent, demented predators, I want to shoot you all and I won't feel bad about it. I'll have done society a service. Big think on the psychosis aspect here.
What's the 5 holes in your brain thing?
Oh, I have no idea.
Is it like the 3 dimples on your skull, or just she's going to put 5 holes in my brain?
Well, that's the question, but I mean, she's not exactly compos mentis, is she? She seems to have lost her train of thought at some point. But she says, it's impossible to talk to white people about race because we're talking to psychopaths.
No, cock your head while I kill you.
Yeah, exactly. I'll wipe the blood off and spring away, and with the spring of my step, feeling like I've done a service to society. You're the psychopath, is her opinion. So I listened to the whole interview, the whole speech that she gave, and it's basically just this over and over and over. Her just talking about how much she hates white people, how she, finds them insufferable, how they are oppressing her, how and she speaks as if she's black as well, which is amusing. She takes on the black racial problems of America as her own. It's like, you're from India.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But yes, there are other parts where she complains that her white patients in her practice, because she is a psychiatrist, so she has white patients that she has to talk to. You can only imagine how that goes, right? But the thing is, she hates them, right? She doesn't feel the same way about them as she does about abstract white people, and she doesn't want to put a bullet in their head, apparently, which I thank God for small mercies. But she hates them because the white patients in her practice, happening in very left-wing circles, when they're saying, well, I feel bullied by allegations of racism, it kind of drives her a bit mad, because she's like, well, you oppressive white people have been oppressing the non-whites since day one, and so you claiming you're being bullied by allegations of racism is affecting your mental health makes you an even worse person than I thought you were 5 minutes ago. In
my mind, she's in the practice like wearing African garb with like BLM singles as like a band.
Well, I assume she's got her shrine to George Floyd and all that, but so she's mad, frankly, and so she after this claims that she was misquoted. It's like, I listened to the entire hour. She has not been misquoted. They've just taken, and it's not even very far into the speech where she starts saying about how she wants to shoot white people and like wipe their blood off without any guilt.
I was misquoted. I want to hang them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. She didn't say that, but she was a lot more direct. But no, she wasn't misquoted at all. She says that her words have been taken out of context to control the narrative, and the lecture was used as a provocation. Used provocation as a tool for real engagement. I mean, it was certainly provocative, and it's getting a lot of engagement. So, well, was it even taken out of context by your standard? By your standard, it seems that you've done the right thing. But again, it just comes down to her screeching she hates white people and wants to abolish whiteness. This is what it all comes down to. She says, too much of the discourse on race is dry, bland regurgitation of new vocabulary words with no work in the unconscious. And if you want to hit the unconscious, you have to feel real negative feelings. Let's revel in the negativity, shall we?
Just want to mention, if she was doing this in the UK and it was the reverse, obviously.
Well, this would be a hate crime.
It wouldn't just be that. She'd be under surveillance by the state.
Well, I mean, she sounds
It's
like a
not in
terrorist.
prison. Yeah.
She says, my speaking metaphorically about my own anger was a method for people to reflect on negative feelings, to normalize negative feelings, because if you don't, it will turn into violent action. Well, yeah, it sounds like you're going to know, don't it? I mean, Christ. But it's hard to believe she doesn't want to engage in violent action, though. This sounds like very post hoc rationalization of what she said, because the way she's delivering it is performative. She's enjoying, indulging in this dark fantasy about murdering white people, and so now she's got to be like, well, hang on a second, this was just a way of normalizing negative feelings. It's like, but we're not allowed to normalize negative feelings because that was categorized as hate. There are lots of people, the white people you have to treat who've got negative feelings about being called racist. You're like, no, that's not going to be normalized. What's going to be normalized is my desire to shoot you in the face. It's like, what? This is not me that says her. She's mad. But the thing about this, and this is the bit that speaks to the structural problem of places like Yale, Dr. Kilanani noted that her lecture had initially been well received. After she gave it, several attendees praised her comments on the online feed. One woman who identified herself as a Yale psychologist called it, quote, absolutely brilliant. Yale psychologist. Shoot white people in the head. Absolutely brilliant.
Like all the people internally that's shared with were in awe.
Yep. A man said, I feel very shook in a good way. A black woman thanked Dr. Kilanani for giving voice to us as people of colour and what we go through all the time.
So they're all fantasizing about killing all the white kids at school?
I suppose we can take that as the natural inference of what they're supporting here. But why are the staff of the Yale psychology wing lunatic, genocidal racists? I think that is the real question that we have to ask. Why is it they appreciate a woman sharing in graphic emotional detail her explicit fantasies about killing white people? Why do they revel in this? But anyway, so she's in the speech, she talks about how it's critical race theory that allows her to see through this lens, and that this informs all of her analysis on the subject, which is no surprise whatsoever. And she's presented by the person who's hosting her as operating in the Socratic tradition, which is now where critical race theory is trying to hide itself from the obvious the obvious evil that it is. It's trying to be like, oh no, I'm just following the thoughts of Socrates. No, you're not. Not even slightly. But what's really funny is that the Yale School of Medicine had to put out a statement about this, obviously. And they were like, school leaders added a disclaimer to the video to emphasize that the ideas expressed by the speaker conflict with the core values of the Yale School of Medicine.
Unlike the psychology department, who fully endorsed this course.
But yeah, if we get to the next one for Newsweek, she had to push them to release this talk to the public, because Yale was just like, this is awful, what are you doing? And of course, this was then made public. But there's a statement that they sent to Newsweek, which I find very interesting, that several faculty members expressed concern to the Yale School of Medicine's Office of Academic and Professional Development and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion about the content of the talk. She sounds like a terrorist, that's why. The School of Medicine leaders reviewed the recording of the talk and found the tone and content antithetical to the values of the school. So you shouldn't shoot white people and then wipe their blood off and then bounce away with a spring you step, according to Yale?
The school's
I'm glad we've got an answer on that.
Like we're not pro-white genocide, in case you're wondering. It's like, why did we get to that
We
point?
just have speakers who are pro-white genocide.
Like the psychology department is, but I mean the English department, not so much.
Just expressly reveling in it as well. And It's it's mad. So in deciding whether to post
But
the
don't
video,
worry, guys. It's just on university campuses.
it's just on university campuses. It's just your children watching this. In deciding whether to post the video, we weighed our grave concern about the extreme hostility, imagery of violence, and profanity expressed by the speaker against our commitment to freedom of expression. Ah, yes. You're big on defending freedom of expression, aren't you? Of course you are.
Like Ben Shapiro wants to come to campus and say that women are women,
Oh, deplatformed.
but I want to kill white people because they're white. And I can't stand them, and I feel glorious about doing it.
Well, we have a commitment.
That's pretty cool.
We have a commitment to free speech, you see, and it's mad. And so they say we ultimately decided to post the video with access limited to those who could have attended the talk, the members of the Yale community, which makes you wonder what other things they talk about in their private Yale community, doesn't it? To emphasize that the ideas expressed by the speaker conflict with the core values of Yale School of Medicine, we added the disclaimer. This video contains profanity and imagery of violence. Yale School of Medicine expects the members of our community to speak respectfully to one another and avoid the use of profanity as a matter of professionalism and acknowledge our common humanity, which is literally the opposite of what the point of that lecture was.
What? They're complaining about the profanity used, not the calls to violence and terrorism. I mean, genocide there, in fact.
Well, yeah, I mean, that they're not so bothered about, I guess.
But she said the F word. I mean, come on. Have some standards.
Well, no, but she also, the acknowledgement of our common humanity, that's a very interesting point. And the reason they added that is because the whole lecture is about dehumanizing white people. White people are evil, they are psychopathic, they can't be reasoned with, and it would be a pleasure to shoot them, is what she says all in this thing. And then they add at the end, Yale School of Medicine, and again, right, Yale School of Medicine, right? When you get to the point where you have to put out these kinds of statements, you might want to consider that maybe you're on the wrong path, right? Yale School of Medicine does not condone imagery of violence or racism against any group. Interesting. So they've admitted she's being a racist to white people, which undermines all of the redefinition of the word racism. Well, you can never be racist to white people. Well, Yale think you can. And when you get to the point where you're glorying in the idea of murdering them without any kind of compassion or recourse or any guilt,
In fact, with glee.
that kind of looks like racism against white people. So it's interesting how the Yale School of Medicine have come to this conclusion.
I'll go with that point you mentioned earlier about the shared humanity as well, not to miss it at all, which is that, as you point out, if you dehumanize whites as not part of humanity, our shared humanity is ours, as in the non-whites.
Yeah.
And then the white people, they're not part of humanity.
Well,
That's their position.
yeah, and of course, Aruna Kilanani, which is an interesting name now I've thought about it.
Killer nut.
Yeah, she of course has expressed no regret for this, and so thankfully, at least the intellectual dark web are still out there doing things, and they of course have lots of objections to the things that she said. So Nicholas Christakis, do you remember him?
I remember the name, yeah.
He was Yale professor who was the one who was being berated by a bunch of students in the middle of the campus.
Oh, about the Halloween costumes.
About the Halloween
Why
costumes.
Did you accept the position?
Yeah, exactly.
That
That one. Yeah, he's turned into an activist against wokeism now, thank God.
As if he could do anything else.
yeah, exactly. The racism expressed by Dr. Aruna Kilanani and in a grand rounds at Yale, just released by Barry Weiss and Katie Perzog, was deeply worrisome and counterproductive. Of course, as an invitee, she's free to speak on campus, but her views must be soundly rejected. And then Gad Sad adds, Dear Aruna Kilanani, if I'm not mistaken, you are the presenter of a talk in question. If I'm a Lebanese Jew, do I suffer from the psychopathy of the white mind, or do I possess the noble architecture of a brown mind? I love Gad Sad so much. He's so funny. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's brown. So Gad Sad does not, I love it. He doesn't respect any of these people, and he's going to completely twist it around. I love it. But Jordan Peterson was just like, read it and weep. Grand rounds, psychiatrist Yale, say no more. I mean, this is directly in his wheelhouse as well, so he must be looking at this going, she's mental. Someone just, and then we got a couple of just random Twitter people saying, unless your entire persona is an elaborate prank, you are one of its most pathologically racist people who have ever opened her mouth. Your rhetoric sits very comfortably beside that of the 20th century's worst perpetrators of genocide. Your words are poison to humanity. Great comment, that. I wonder how fairly you graded your white students considering your violent fantasies that you hold towards them. You should be immediately stripped of your position of power and investigated.
Also, I have to wonder, because might be a little bit insensitive, but she's Indian, right? So she's not black.
Of Indian descent. No, she's not black.
Exactly right. And looking at her, I mean, she's not that brown either. So I have to wonder what position in Indian org chart, I can't remember what the term is, like Brahmin and whatnot.
The caste.
Yeah, caste system there. And then I wonder how she feels about Indian treatment of Africans in general. And then where does she come into all this? I mean, does she also get a bullet in the head at the end of all this?
Well, once all the white people are gone, presumably.
And that just keeps going.
Then yeah, the snake keeps eating its own tail. But yeah, so that's the current latest, catastrophic public relations disaster that Yale University is having. Again, Nicholas Christakis, he's a professor at Yale. He's experienced this like in 2017, and in 2021 now we've got to the point where it's not just that's a racist Halloween costume, now it's we need to shoot white people in the head. Yeah. That's where they've got to.
I was going to say it's the latest call for white genocide out of academia.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember, what is it? All I Want for Christmas is white genocide?
Yeah,
a couple of years ago,
yes, his George Ciccariello-Maher.
Yeah.
Where he's like, all I want for Christmas is white genocide. He was a professor at a university. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. It wasn't Yale, though. But
it's just, it keeps coming out, and I'm just like, yep, that's where critical race theory is going to lead you.
Yeah, but all of this is a product of critical race theory. She says so in the speech that she gave, in the Psychopathy of the White Mind, or whatever it was. She says explicitly this is a product of critical race theory, and there we go. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.